Hi, Becky.
Hi. I have to get back to my other meeting. Susie, could I think I'll wait till AJ's here and make him the host.
All right.
He'll be here any second, I bet.
Yeah, you're right. There he is.
There he is, good. I'm gonna make him co-host.
Hey, everyone.
Hi, AJ. I made you co-host.
Great.
And I was gonna make George co-host, but if you can do that too, I
Yeah.
think, right?
I can do that. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you guys. I'll see
All
you
right.
after a bit.
Okay. Sounds good.
How do I leave? I can't be host when I leave. AJ, I think I have to make you host.
As opposed to co-host. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I
think you-
can't leave as host without taking you all down.
Oh, we don't want to go down.
Okay, this should work better then. All right, see you in a little bit.
All right. See ya.
Thank you.
Okay. Jim can't make it tonight. I don't know if he just emailed me or everybody.
No, I don't
Guess he
think.
had back surgery yesterday and is still recuperating. I think he thought
Maybe
he'd be okay.
his votes would be a little loopy.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Mhm.
All right.
Two words I do not like to hear: back surgery.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Assuming I haven't heard anything from George, so I would imagine he'll be joining.
Hmm.
They call him.
That'd be great.
I'll try.
Any melody tonight?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything. Let's see.
Yeah, I'll just call to remind you about the finance committee meeting. We're waiting for you, man. Okay.
Thanks, Bob. All right, Leslie. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. It's more of a comment. Well, it is a question and a comment.
Sure.
I know you've not called the meeting to order yet, but essentially, who is responsible for coordinating public meetings, town public meetings that don't conflict to one another? Is this Becky? Is this you?
Well,
Wait, let me finish. You know, there's a PIP meeting going on that I had to leave. And tonight's agenda is talking about reviewing the preliminary fiscal 24 budget. No small thing. So this is really amateur hour. So who's responsible for this?
okay, so we have a normal schedule that's designed to not conflict with select board meetings. Last week we had to postpone our normal or our anticipated FinCom meeting. I was aware that there were multiple meetings, important meetings happening this week, including yesterday. There was a forum for the library building committee. So it was, and I made the decision that we couldn't wait another week just because of the need to make some progress. So this was a bit of an unusual situation this time. Obviously, you know, because you attend many meetings, we normally meet on Tuesdays, and we usually alternate our meetings so that they don't overlap with the select board. That's about all I can tell you. I know it's unfortunate. Didn't really see a way to avoid it for this meeting. Okay.
I'll just say again, if you're reviewing
Yeah.
preliminary review of the fiscal 24 budget, that to
Yes.
me is a big deal.
Well, it is a big deal, but
I know a lot of
Leslie, this is
First,
preliminary review. This is the first opportunity that we will all have had a chance to look at the budget. It's going to be a topic over the next several meetings. This is not the case where we're going to be looking at the budget and approving it and voting on it tonight. This is our first look at. Obviously, we've been working and meeting with departments all year long. This is our first look at a draft of the budget. It's going to, and there's going to be plenty of opportunities for us to discuss it in future meetings. Okay.
Okay, I have to leave to go to the other meeting, and hopefully I'll be able to see a Zoom recording of this.
Okay. Have a great meeting. Yeah. Go ahead, George.
I just want to mention, correct me if I'm wrong, AJ, but Becky is going to be showing us the budget. She's at the PIP meeting with the select board, and so we were pushing that back on our agenda anyway. So when that meeting ends, I think that's when we're going to address the budget. So you should have the opportunity to be here for that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, George. We'll see what happens with that.
sure.
I appreciate it. And I appreciate, AJ, you're listening to me, you know,
Yep.
and obviously I'm a little annoyed at all of this, but, you know, thank you for your graciousness.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Sure thing. So perhaps we'll see you a little bit later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay. All right, guys. Yeah, this is an unusual situation tonight. As I think everybody knows, Becky's going to loop back in after she's wrapped up. So I'm going to try to deal with agenda items at the beginning of our meeting that I don't think require her attention or her participation. So I think we can start with review of minutes and then discuss the capital planning recommendations for this year. Talk to Becky about it. She's comfortable with us discussing that in her absence. Okay, so I think we have two minutes, sets of minutes, one from March 21st, and then one from that, I guess, select board meeting that some of you, I can't remember who was participating in that, but attended on the 28th. So let's talk about the 21st. Does everybody have those minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions, comments?
I had two things.
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, the simple one is item 5A and number 1. I think we should put last names on that because there's multiple gyms.
Yeah.
And I probably should put Gail's last name. So minor thing.
Okay,
And then line 2, section 2 broadband budget, line A. It's more a question. I think Jim Hemingway might be able to answer it. So I know that the fee that the consumer is charged is what, $75 if you got a phone. And it says here in our minutes, the monthly rate is $38. And I know that there's other things going on. But Jim, do you have a reconciliation of what makes up the $75 that a typical person is charged? What are the other components on the bill that we receive besides this $38?
Yeah, the 38 is what we have to that's sort of our cut, so to speak, of the $75. The rest of it is what Shell collects for its services, which is phone and or internet. That's fundamentally pretty much it. The drop to 38 from quite a bit higher, I think it was around 45 or 50 or so, was due to the fact that we managed to eliminate one of our $2 million debts,
Yes.
a year or so ago. So that accounts for the, the drop from about 45 to 38 of money that we get from Shell to put into our various service accounts and depreciation accounts and all, and all of that.
Good point. Thank you. Yeah, and it makes sense to me now that you say that because we don't have a line in the budget for Shell.
No, definitely not. No,
They just cut it, they take it right off the top.
That's right. Well, they're the ones who do the billing, obviously, and so they cut us monthly checks. Curiously enough, they can't use direct deposit. This is a peculiarity of the state, I guess. There's a regulation that applies here, but they can't. They have to send us a physical check, as opposed to Crocker is always able to deposit it directly into our account, which of course speeded things up a little bit at least. But
I think maybe the minute needs to be amended because the way it's written doesn't reflect that the average bill is.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
So I could say this reflects part of the $75 a month, 30.
Yes, why don't you say
Yeah,
that?
I would word it as the portion that is transferred to Shutesbury from Shelled or, from the provider. I don't know. I don't, it doesn't matter, but I think your point is right. We should mention that.
And Susie, could on 2C, could you change, just make there are two very minor changes. The budget plan includes, and I would add the MLPs, capital stabilization funds, just so that people don't get it confused with.
Okay, that was part C. So it should say the budget plan includes what?
The MLPs, capital stabilization
Okay.
funds,
Okay.
as opposed to the town's capital stabilization fund. And then on 2E, I would change in the last sentence, they may put in a claim to they will put in a claim, because Gail had already received
Okay,
enough to
Okay.
to make such a claim,
all right.
and it's still climbing.
All right,
So I make a motion, we approve the minutes as amended.
Second,
All right, George, want to kick us up?
Arvanitis, aye.
I think, Bob, you're muted.
Groves, aye. Thanks.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
All right. Oh, shoot.
28.
Okay, so next up is the 28th. Okay, so I was not at this meeting. So does anybody who attended have any comments or questions?
No, let me, I make a motion, we approve these minutes.
Second.
I just like a minute to look at this. That's the first time I've seen it. Sorry, I guess I missed it. It came through.
Sure. Jim, were you gonna ask a question?
Wait, I'm just going through.
Okay.
Apparently, from what I understand, we were told by Becky that we had to make a decision now because tomorrow the vote was required or had to be in. Am I correct on that?
Yes,
That's in minute 3.
Well, apparently, that information wasn't correct from Becky, that we had until June to voice our yes or no on this, from what I understand. That's something I've learned since. I didn't know that, of course, at the time.
Where did you get that information?
Next door, I can't, someone who had discussed it with FERCog people. I don't remember. Maybe Bob has heard the same thing.
Well,
But anyway, it's not important because that's not what was said. I'm just pointing that out, that it was.
well, but you know, you mentioned Becky said that, but I think it was actually in the documentation that we had all received when there was, remember, there was a lot of attachments and there was a lot of things circled. I think
Yeah.
it was also in there.
Oh, it was, okay.
I'll just say, just to put my 2 cents in here, it wasn't in the documents. I looked at that carefully. And so,
Okay,
to me, my objection to that, and that's why I made the motion that I made that we approved at that meeting, was that we needed time to inspect this. And I must say, we face on this committee and a lot of other committees, capital planning, for example, we face these situations where we're given information, incomplete information at the last minute, and then told we have to hurry up and make a decision or else we're going to miss out, or there's going to be some other problem. That is, I said at that meeting, it's not in these minutes, but I said, that is no way to do business, to deliberate over important financial matters. And I think this is a prime case of that. And then, of course, the select board did not follow the recommendation of the finance committee. And, whether or not this is a just raise or a proposal, I don't know still, because again, we didn't have proper time to examine it, to discuss it, and to put our head together on it. So this is a point that has to be made to the select board and to Becky, that we need timely delivery of data, not at the last minute, and then be told to rush and hurry.
We're not rehashing that meeting. We're checking out the minutes.
Okay, fine. I take that point, but I just ranted a little bit there.
All right, if there are no other comments about the minutes,
Arvanitis, aye.
Grove's eye. If there's a motion, is there?
Yeah,
I mean-
Susie seconded it.
Okay.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew abstain.
Closure, aye.
Okay. All right, so that's it on minutes. So I think next up we should talk about capital planning's recommendations in connection with 3 requests that were made for FY24. And I'll just go through them. And Bob, you should fill in any important information that I leave out, if you would. So the first request came from the elementary school, and it was for 2 separate flooring projects. One was carpeting in the library, which I think has been sort of part of this kind of multi-year effort to replace carpeting in various parts of the school. And I think the last couple of years, if I'm not mistaken, we've done different parts of the school. But anyway, it was time for the library carpet.
Was it the library or the conference room?
It's the library
Yeah,
No,
and the kitchen. The 2 floors are the kitchen.
okay.
and the library.
right.
Okay.
And
The conference room floor
Was
has been, I think the money has been allocated for that, but we did not do it because we were waiting to complete the door replacement.
All right, okay, I just had heard conference room.
So the room that we voted on was the library, and the other room was the kitchen.
So that's, I guess, a vinyl flooring replacement. And Bob, I think there was, if I remember correctly, that we were sort of waiting for the roof project to be completed because there was lots of kind of leaking. There were a lot of leaking issues in the kitchen.
Yeah, there was no way that floor should have been replaced until the roof issues were solved because it would have undermined a new floor, potentially
Mhm.
damaged it. So now the roof's been solved. So now this project's going to go forward.
Okay.
And the other thing that we should understand is that they're going to go through the bidding process and they're going to get, we did vote to, with the existing bids to have a amount of money not to exceed,
Yeah.
which I think can handle it. But there is going to be additional money required for moving the kitchen appliances there and putting them back, because I don't think that's included in any of the flooring
Right.
bids. So
All
something,
right.
somehow the town's going to have to manage.
Okay, so in terms of what was discussed and voted on, there were two bids submitted from Summerlin and Mercier. And there was a motion to replace flooring in the library and kitchen at a cost not to exceed $31,000. And that motion passed unanimously. Second request was from the highway department, and that was for the replacement of the backhoe, which I understand is kind of the sort of workhorse of the department. It's a piece of equipment that's used pretty much every day. And the current machine is a 2008 Cat with over 7,000 hours on it. And Tim's sort of representation to us was that its vehicle was getting to an age where it will require expensive repairs. He submitted 3 bids. It was pretty clear that the bid for replacing it with another Cat was going to be the best option. That came in at $155,000 minus a $35,000 trade-in of our current backhoe for a total of $120,000. So the committee approved a motion to recommend the town purchase a new backhoe loader at an amount not to exceed $120,000. And that vote was 3 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstain. Bob voted no on that one. Any important details I left out there, Bob?
Well, I think that Steve abstained because he's town, he works for the highway department. I don't know if you mentioned that.
I did.
But the other thing is just, I don't know if we're going to be voting on this, but this, just to explain it, there are 3 bids that were entertained, 1 for a case, 1 for a deer, 1 for a cat. And the deer and the cat both included a trade-in for the existing vehicle, and the case did not include. So if you calculate the value of that vehicle, so the average of the 2 other ones, or even the lowest one, case would be the lower bid. Now, I don't, what other considerations there might exist. I just want to make that point.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't include, it's not apples to apples because it doesn't include the trade.
Right. Although I think it was mentioned that they were not interested in a trade-in. So that I think I think we could have, I guess there's would have been potentially an opportunity to sell or auction our current backhoe, but
I'd like to look into that. That seems unusual that a dealer wouldn't take a trade, but
I think that was mentioned, but yeah.
Yeah, Caterpillar is not exactly brand X, you know.
Right. Okay, so, and then the third request was from the building committee, and that was, I think they've got sort of a kind of a list of various projects, involved in repairing town buildings. I actually don't have a lot of information about what's on that list. Maybe you do, Bob.
No, there is no list that we've ever seen. And so this is a very unusual request in that, first of all, the building committee, which I was the chair for many years, we were funded out of the budget. There are lines in the budget that were disbursements or allocations from the budget that were used to underwrite the expense of maintaining jobs, small jobs that would come up, replacing a window, fixing a door, this kind of thing. If there was a big capital project, then there would be a fund there would be an application through the capital planning and the finance committee. And then the town meeting would vote for an article to support the capital project. We never had an omnibus. We've never been funded in this way. That is, the building committee, of which I used to be a member, was never funded this way. And this doesn't seem to be a legitimate part of our process for what should be an ongoing expense funded through the budget to be funded in this, as you've already pointed out, AJ, without any information about what capital expenses might be underwritten by it. So that's my take on it. I said I support the building committee being funded to maintain and repair town buildings. I think these minutes that we're both looking at probably don't represent that. They say it was a unanimous vote.
But I think you sort of had that qualifier, but you did vote to.
I said I support funding it some way or another, but I did bring up the issue that I just raised at that meeting, and I said, Becky, this has never been done. She says, oh yes, it has been. Well, I've looked into it, and really, she's mistaken about that. It hasn't been done.
Okay.
So I think I want to raise that issue here.
Okay. All right, Susie.
I was at a select board meeting, I guess, when the building committee brought in their template for how they're organizing the information in a list. One of the projects was used as an example, and they asked the select board if presenting the information in that way was what they were looking for, and they agreed. So then the committee was going to go back and start doing that kind of inventory,
Right.
inventorying and putting it on the list. So I know they've started a list,
Okay.
and that first project was an example, and it has to do with the stairs at the current library. The stairs and the railing are falling apart. So I know they are
Working on.
got the go ahead for the way they organize the information.
Okay.
You know, Susie, just if I may add one thing here, I think that I would support this committee funding out of reserves, kind of replenishing or the committee's revolving account, if you will, but not through the capital process. Through, we could vote to have an allocation, a one-time allocation of whatever number of money that is reasonable for the building committee's fund if it's too low to handle what they anticipate. But I don't think it should go through capital, because capital is for specific projects. So that's my view, my interpretation of what the right way to handle is. I do support the committee having adequate funds. That don't.
Right, but Bob, wouldn't it be fair to say that this is this is going to have to be a warrant article that's brought up at town meeting? Presumably, the building committee will have more information to share, and then ultimately the town will determine whether to authorize this. If it's a transfer.
Well, I'll do me a favor and read the capital planning's founding documents and the guidelines in the financial handbook, and you'll see. I think you'll agree that this is not the right process. It's not a matter of whether it should be funded, through the budget, a transfer in the budget from free cash to their line. I think that's we've done that before, but not through the capital process.
Okay, so all right. So the issue that you're raising here is you would be okay with FinCom voting on and approving a transfer request. Not that we have $20,000 in our reserve account right now, but if we had that, you would say that you wouldn't necessarily object to that, but you're objecting to that transfer happening through a warrant article capital request.
Right. Yeah, let me just say this just briefly, like we, on the capital planning committee, we have a schedule. We're supposed to have the applications by February 1st.
Right.
We got this thing last week. We don't have no specifics, nothing that follows our parameters, nothing that follows our system. And then we're supposed to just sign on the dotted line. It's like complete blank check. So that's no good, you know. I would support the building committee if they had a list of repairs and they had an estimate about what the repairs cost. But through the process that we've used in the past, which I think is to take some money from either the budget itself and replenish their accounts, maybe increase the line, or if it's an unusual thing, then transfer some reserves into their line. That's
Okay.
It's not right to do it this way. This last minute, no information deal.
But did you have one more option, which is that there's a warrant article requesting money for a project?
Yeah, well, then that would be, but I think that frankly, that we had a deadline of February 1st for these applications to be submitted. And this has been going on for weeks. We've been getting more and more applications and changes. And this is what happened last year, and it's not acceptable. It's got to be an orderly process.
Okay, so just to be clear, there, because I think there's sort of a process issue now, and then George, I'll get to your question or comment. There was a motion raised at capital planning to recommend $20,000 of funding for the building committee. I believe that, I mean, my memory and the minutes reflect that motion was passed unanimously, but it sounds like, Bob, you might have.
You're right about that, but AJ, it just reinforces my point that there was no information. It was the last minute. We had no time to examine it. And I did make a qualifying remark to that effect.
Yeah, okay. George.
Yeah, I had a few questions. You answered one, so it's $20,000. And then the two things. So, Bob, you're not on that committee anymore.
No.
How long have the people who are on that committee been on that committee? Are they newbies and they just don't understand the process?
I think that's quite possibly. There's one member that I know of that was on the committee before, and that's Frank McGinn. And he was fairly new to the committee and maybe somewhat unfamiliar with the history. The rest of the members are all new. I don't know them actually, any of them. So I haven't got. I've been meaning to attend one of their meetings and hand some stuff over to them. So, but no, I don't know. I know they're all new. You're right.
Okay, and then my other two questions. One is, when you say reserves, it would really have to be free cash, right? If it's a warrant article, it's going to be stabilization or free cash,
Yes.
not
Right.
reserves, not the FinCom reserve.
Correct.
Oh no, I didn't mean the FinCom. I meant.
Okay. Well, that's just because I heard that. And I think AJ actually said it, but whatever. And then I wanted to let everybody know, I took the capital funding analysis that we do year to year. We do each year where we put on these items and then we decide, do we take it from free cash stabilization or debt, whatever. Yeah. For that purpose, I would like to, I know you're saying this isn't really a capital item and maybe it shouldn't be there, but if we're going to consider it, I'd like to put it on that spreadsheet anyways, because it'll affect the change in cash in free cash. And we can see how it fits in with all the other warrant articles.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the way I should word this. This is the warrant article request for cash.
Right. I don't think we have a choice. I think we have to do that, George, because capital planning has made this recommendation. I don't think we have even if our committee objected to this, I don't think we have I think we have to make a recommendation on.
Yeah, no, that's how I'm thinking too. I just wanted to make sure we were all aware of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So I also understand that in our budget, there is a expense line called building repairs that is for, in this case, $9,451. So that's one line. And then there's this $20,000 request that we will decide where that money comes out of. And that's it for right now, right? That's what we got.
There used to be another line in there for building repairs, Susie. I don't know if it's still there, but
Well, so that's the one I read was building repairs, but
it might have been taken out.
If you go to the very end of the budget,
okay.
there is a line called transfer to building fund. And I think there was a year or two when we put money aside for building maintenance, and I think it's all blank now, but when we get to the budget, we'll see that line.
Okay. Yeah,
I noticed it when I was looking at the budget that Becky sent today.
Okay. Okay. So
All
I'll
right.
say there's one more line somewhere, maybe.
Yeah,
It's at the very end. It's like below the capital stabilization transfer.
I looked there, but okay.
All right. George, would you be comfortable if we use your tool
Oh, yeah.
now to start
Look
exploring
at
some
it.
ideas about funding these things? Yeah, I'm gonna make you co-host. Let's see.
So you haven't mentioned the school roof.
Correct. There was no discussion about the school roof because I think we're still, I mean, I think without the engineer's report, which I haven't seen that, right? I mean, has anybody
no,
heard that's been produced? Okay. So I think without that report and without a specific number, I don't think capital planning was in a position to discuss it.
Well, I'm going to include it on our schedule.
Yeah, we
because I will
definitely
take it
should.
into account. Okay, yeah, let me know
Okay,
when I can take it.
I think you can now.
So I think you can see it.
Yes.
So this is the upper section. These are the two items that were approved at special town meeting. Right now, I'm assuming 750 for the school roof. And I know the select board has already decided to apply ARPA money.
Right.
And we got the state funding. And so that's the other. It defaults to borrowing, but that doesn't mean we've made the decision yet. That's just what it shows right now.
Right.
Now, all these default to borrowing until we start putting numbers into these sections, you know, the free cash and capital stabilization. This number is not right, but I'm going to throw in it just to throw in a number. If we include in our budget the transfer to capital stabilization, then this will offset any capital stabilization that we use.
Right.
And the reason I put it there is because you all remember this all comes down to here. So actually, what's going on here? Something's not right. I'll figure that out later. These balances are starting balances. I've confirmed them all. That's where our funds were at the beginning of this fiscal year. And we know we had special town meeting that used free cash to the tune of 155,000. So essentially at this very moment, we have $907,000 in free cash. Anything we do up here again will certainly change this number. And then there's the stabilization. If we do fund a transfer to capital stabilization in the operating budget, it would increase it by 55,000. And of course, if we put anything in here, if we decide to use any of it for any of these items, then of course that's going to decrease these numbers. So that's just how the spreadsheet works. And I know you all know this. I'm just showing you as a reminder of what we're working with here.
Okay. Thanks, George.
Could you send that to us?
Yeah, I'll send it to you in an Excel spreadsheet format so you can all play around with it.
All right, so I guess, so one question is do we want to spend some time tonight?
Well, there are some no-brainers here, right? I mean, we're not going to use capital stabilization or stabilization for 31,000 or 20,000, right? Those typically are funded with free cash.
Yeah, so if we, you want to go ahead and plug that in as being funded through free cash?
And I shouldn't say no-brainer because anytime you do a no-brainer, usually it ends up looking like you had no-brainer.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe that's not wise, but we know we can't borrow for these amounts.
Right. And so what does that leave free cash at right now?
856.
Okay. All right.
I want to raise a question if I may, AJ.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Bob.
You made a comment about how if the capital planning committee voted unanimously, say, for example, to support $20,000 for buildings maintenance, that we have no choice but to support it. I still don't understand.
Sorry, that's not exactly what I meant. I just to clarify, what I mean is that we have no choice but to discuss it and I think have have some guidance on how it is to be funded if approved by a town meeting, right? I mean, I think,
Yeah.
I think, I think I don't think we can, I don't think we can just say, well, capital planning sort of approved or is recommending a project, but, you know, we don't think it's a good project, so we're not gonna plan for or make a recommendation for how it is to be funded. Do you disagree with that?
Let me just try to put something in my own words here, which is that just making an example, which is say that the finance committee has a obligation to look at to evaluate whatever proposals come its way for their timing as much as anything else. Like, so what I've seen in my observation have been looking at other towns that there's stuff that stays on the shelf that's been proposed for years sometimes. Until such time as when it becomes more actively considered. So, you know, in the case of this particular issue, I won't go through my problems are with it, but I think we do have a responsibility to also evaluate the timing of a proposal. For example, let's just say the backhoe, we might say, we don't want to do it this year. Or that's something that's legitimate, is it not? And we can make a recommendation to that effect to town meeting. Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess in that scenario, you're saying, you know, we might have a project that we sort of recognize as a town need, but we may make a recommendation to hold off on it for some period of time because of other sort of financial constraints, or I mean, is that the kind of?
Well, I think that there'll be many reasons why we might consider the timing to be off. We might say, we're going to put this aside for the moment, shelf it for the moment. It might be a financial urgency for some other project that we prefer to put ahead of it, even if it came along later.
Yeah.
That's more urgent, like say a leaky roof, for example.
Yeah, so prioritizing it. Yeah.
But you know, but an emergency that comes up like the PFAS thing, right, will supersede one thing. Part of our job is to sort those things out. True?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Suzie and then George.
When we do that as a committee, we would have to address the maintenance costs of holding off something and using an older, using a machine until longer. And so somewhat a replacement schedule has to do with not waiting till things are broken. And because as a municipality, you're responsible for having equipment ready and going and prepared to meet the town's needs. So I think it's a complex decision to set things aside. And it is true that when you get something big like PFAS, there has to be sort of an immediate one, but the thing that came along with PFAS was the town searching out a funding source for it. So it wasn't just, so that will always be part of it, trying to find good funding. It will always be part of it that things need to be replaced before they're broken and the town can't meet its responsibilities.
Right.
George?
Thank you. Yeah, so I agree with what Susie just said. I mean, we can always ask ourselves that question. Does it make sense to push this back? But we do need to understand the impact of that. But it is possible we're going to have years, it's going to happen. We're going to have multiple things and we just can't do it all at the same time. So that's where the capital planning comes in, right? And my second question to you is, do we know what we might be seeing as requests in fiscal 25 and 26? So that we can kind of get that long range thinking in our head, I think it's important.
Well, that's the 25-year schedule or whatever it is. And I do think the capital plan committee needs to review that carefully. Some things are on there and they may say, it got on here for 25-year replacement schedule, but we find they're not making very good ones of those and we need to move it down to 20, or we're not really, we can stretch it out without being worried about meeting our municipal responsibilities.
Yeah.
Well, one thing is that the capital planning committee really didn't do a good job with our long-term plan. It's kind of a mess. For example, and one of the aspects of it that it was that the backhoe was actually put in there for 28. So, you know, that's one of the reasons I didn't support it. But anyway, we do need to do a better job in that committee, nailing this down, sending out questionnaires to every department so that we know how many vehicles we own, what their conditions are, what their value is, what their estimated lifespan is, and all the rest of it. We don't have that. We don't have a good long-term. We need to, by our law, by our mandate, by our town bylaw, we need a 5-year capital plan. That's part of our responsibility written into the bylaw. We don't have a good one right now. So I think we gotta meet up. If I'm on the committee, I'd like to meet up earlier and have a more effective way to address these issues for the coming years, because I think that would make our job more transparent and more effective. And instead of having people just come in with requests week after week after we've already supposedly closed down applications, we could have a sort of a nice, clear understanding of the landscape of what's coming up for the town, convey that to the finance committee so that the finance committee, this committee, can do proper planning for expenses that are coming down the road. So I really think the committee didn't do a great job this year, and I think in the future we try to do a better job.
Okay, yeah, I think the only other thing I'd mention is that we did get a pretty detailed list from the elementary school that mentioned some future projects.
Yep.
I think the sidewalk and parking lot, which I think is definitely a project that we're gonna get a request on, if not next year, I think shortly after that. Okay. Should we go back to George's analysis here? And
At this point, we have 2 unfunded items, we haven't made a decision on, right?
backhoe and the roof, right?
Right. And, what is this real number? I think a lot pivots on that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the best information we have at this moment. So and we all understand that
I'd like to get an update from Becky. Maybe we can ask her later what's
Yeah.
going on here. So it seems like we should have had something to go on by now. We're not going to be able to schedule this roof this year.
Yeah, I agree. We're not gonna be able to get on the warrant article in a month.
I don't think so. Okay,
And so, given those things aren't done, just let me finish, just so I can finish AJ. So we can see what our cash balances would look like with the 2 things we did talk about, 31 and 20. So still not bad. We still got some flexibility, I think. So.
Yeah.
These numbers, yeah, we got some flexibility. So yeah, that's it. And what this doesn't include also is we should probably come up with an estimate for how much free cash will increase from fiscal 23 to 24.
Yeah.
Because in July, every year it goes up a little.
Yeah.
So
has it? So I guess that was a question I had for you, George, because I just don't remember
What have a lot this year?
what the trend has been on kind of.
it
What does that number look like in the last couple of years?
it always goes up. That I can tell you. To what extent I can't tell you, because there's always unspent lines in the budget.
Yeah.
And you can't spend money that wasn't approved out of free cash. You can't spend anything that was approved. So generally speaking, it always goes up, and it does vary year to year. I think, you can go to the data bank and probably get the free cash history.
Does anybody remember what it was from FY22 into FY23?
It's about $2 million total reserves, right?
Yeah, well, FY21, all right, the start of fiscal 22, free cash was $1,174,000. And then we had these items that were approved at town meeting. This one was not. And so it decreased by roughly 4, and this one wasn't either. Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah, so we brought it down by about 441. So this minus 441, we were thinking it was going to be 733. It came in at $1,062,000. So as Bob said, $300,000 increase. It was a big increase.
Yeah.
Thankfully, because we spent half of that increase in January.
Right.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, that did. Susie?
couple things. One, the DLS said that free cash reserves rose over the whole state. Everybody had an uncommon amount come back in free cash. Some of that is because of projects that didn't go forward because of COVID and sort of, I think maybe general paralysis. But anyways, that was one thing they said. And then in the numbers you have there, George, did you account for the 200,000 that Joe Comerford brought to the town? Where is that accounted for?
That's on the school line.
It's on the roof line, yeah.
It's this other amount. So see how I say we borrow 250 because we haven't decided what we're going to do.
But over there you say ARPA. Oh, it's the state funding on the ARPA one.
Yeah, this note is in regards to this $500.
So 500,000 is the ARPA and the state fund from that Joe Comerford brought to our town. Okay.
Got it.
Could we, I wonder if we could model funding the backhoe with, you know, some combination of capital stabilization and free cash, and then borrowing for the balance on the school roof project. Is that something we could?
Yeah, I mean, let me just, so if we do this, and then borrowing for this is 250. If we amortize it over 5 years, if we pay off the loan over 5 years, it's 50,000 a year plus interest. The interest would be at 5%. The annual interest would be 1,250 plus the 50,000. So the debt service would be 6,250. Now, debt service for the truck in Becky's budget that we saw today was 40,000 plus 1,350, and she's still waiting for the treasurer, I think. I don't think that's a final number. So those two numbers combined would be 116. We normally have 113 in the operating budget for the transfer capital stabilization. So we have built in the budget all but $3,000, and these are estimates. So maybe we even at the end of the day would have enough if we did fund. So based on this, if we funded the school roof with debt,
right,
we wouldn't be transferring any more money into capital stabilization for a few years.
Isn't that a line item that we have being taken up by the truck? Is that the truck you're talking about down below?
That is, and so it's each year it's 12695 if I remember.
Okay.
And so if the truck is hold on.
Get an extra one in there.
Yeah, no. So if so 112,695, if the truck is what Becky said, 55, that's what she has in the budget right now, then we have capacity for an additional 59,000.
Right.
And so this would come pretty close to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bob?
I just want to say, my view is that our reserves should be lower. We should be transferring money from free cash as it builds up into the stabilization accounts, and then spending down that money to buy things such as the backhoe and putting them through town meeting warrant article that requires a town vote of 2/3. George and I have been around the block with his idea of having in the budget a debt service number and keeping our borrowing high enough to cover it every year. I don't really agree with that philosophy. I know George and I could argue about it all night. Hopefully we won't. But I'd rather see us spend our savings, which is what our reserves are, to buy what we need when we need them and not pay interest.
Right.
It's,
So
George, can you collapse the ribbon so the sheet comes up and I can see the top and the bottom? All right, thank you.
I might have to get a little. Oh yeah, it all fits.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
any other thoughts about this approach here? This as a kind of
I guess I feel like
to respond to?
if we get the free cash down to 10%, so there's some wiggle room there.
Yeah, so free cash would be our budget last year was 6.7 million. So this number is 12% of that. Our budget this year will probably increase, so I'm going to just say 6.8 million, because I think that's the number I saw, 6.8 something. So, if you think 10% is good, we've got room in free cash for that. So maybe do something like this you're thinking. So what would that number be? I'm just going to do a guesstimate. So if we took 100,000 out of free cash, hell, we could do 150 out of free cash. And now we're at 10%.
And what does that leave the debt service?
Well, here's another way to do it. Take 120 out of free cash, that puts us at 10.8. And then, use stabilizations. Although going back to what you said, AJ, I'm sorry, I jumped the gun on you. So in debt service at that point becomes, if you do it over 5 years, although for 100,000, you probably go 4 years, your debt service would be 30,000, which would be half of the capacity that we have in the budget, remaining capacity.
Good.
And you can imagine my notes are a mess.
Well, this is,
So there's no decisions. This is just, I'm just trying to
Right.
get some of the threads that people are.
this is all what if.
So can I just make a kind of just summarize a couple things here? So it sounds to me just that I'm not hearing really any objections to the concept of funding the backhoe through either free cash or capital stabilization or some combination of the two, right? I haven't heard any objection to that. So I think we've got a kind of clear direction there. And then I think what there's been some discussion about is for the balance of the school roof project, should that be borrowed or should that be some combination of free cash plus borrowing? That sounds like that's
That's what we're considering, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. The only thing I'd add to it is just remind everybody again, we need to find out how much this roof really is.
Yeah.
of course.
We can't make a decision. I guess my point is we can't really make a decision until
No,
we know
this is
that.
not decision-making time. This
Yeah,
is like
it's-
looking at things when they move around.
All right.
And then one more clarity is the debt service line in our budget would be, how would that be impacted? The page, the one,
Yeah, the 112,695.
how would
Right.
that be impacted by what we just said?
Well, for fiscal 24, it won't be impacted because the debt always starts in the subsequent year. So if we approved it in June, the debt service would hit the FY 25 budget. So the amount, whatever amount Becky has in the operating budget now for that transfer will not change this year. In the subsequent year, it'll go down by whatever that amount of debt service would be if we borrowed.
Okay. I'm gonna have to work on that.
Any other comments or suggestions at this point?
I'll send this to everybody.
And George, I think you can send this version that we're looking at right here that has 150K of free cash.
You
Great.
got it.
Okay, cool. Thanks, George.
You're welcome.
All right. I think we've got Catherine Hilton joining us. Catherine, thanks for your patience.
Can we take that off the?
Yeah, we'll take
Yep.
that down.
Yep.
Okay.
It occurred to me.
All right. So just to remind everybody, at our last meeting, we started to discuss Becky shared some of the background on a funding issue that the Board of Health needs some guidance on related to our membership in the what's that? Is it mosquito control
District.
district? Okay, that's the one. So can you, Catherine, could you just kind of summarize sort of where we are at this moment right now and kind of what
Okay, yeah, things have gotten very strange. There's two aspects to this. One of them is simple and one of them is not. The simple one is that it seems to me that the town voted to join the mosquito control district at a rate of $5,000 a year, but we don't have a recurring budget line to pay that. So that seems like something that would be fairly easy to fix for you guys. Yes?
And that annual membership fee, or what is that again? That's 50?
$5,000.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then there's a matter of some prior year.
Well, here's the thing. The mosquito control district has been in a state of chaos, apparently. We found out that we are not the only town that's in arrears by a long shot. One of the reasons that we haven't paid our bills and never came to our attention before is they haven't been sending the bills out. So we have received 2 bills that I think, given the way they bill for the work after they've done it. So I believe that the 2 $5,000 bills that we have received are for services for 2022 and 2021. Here's the thing. I don't have any assurance that we received those services. Partly they're supposed to do, I mean, the scope of service is they do this weekly monitoring throughout the mosquito season, and they send us weekly reports and they send us an end of year report. And I was remiss in not noticing that I wasn't getting these reports. I mean, COVID just took over everything and we just didn't think about it anymore. So what's happened at the district now is the person who was in charge of it, and I think was the whole thing, left in January, and we don't know if he left voluntarily. Clearly, he wasn't fulfilling his administrative duties. And when we asked for the reports for the years that we were being charged for, they couldn't find them. They didn't have them. They went through the guy's computer that, that he left behind, and they weren't there. So I don't know if we even got those services. And I'm damned if I'm going to ask the town to pay $5,000 for something that we may have not even received.
That certainly would be my
Right. I didn't think you would object to that, did you?
No, I mean, why would we pay for services that we didn't receive? And so this actually is providing some important clarity, because I think at our last meeting we thought there was both an issue of does this need to be a budget line in the town's budget moving forward, but there was also a question of, are we responsible for paying previous year's bills that were unpaid because of sort of
right. Yeah, that kind of remains to be seen, but I think there's room for negotiation here, and we're in a strong position because they need us, actually.
Okay.
So
well, at a minimum, it sounds like I mean, we're not even going to discuss paying previous year fees until somebody produces work product, right? I mean, like that. Right. And if we get some indication, some credible indication that the work was provided, then we'll come back to you and talk about it. But for now, there's nothing we can do, really. Okay. So, all right. So let me go to Bob and then Susie with questions.
Hi, Catherine. I'd like to address a couple of questions to you. One, my recollection was that when we met on this issue, whatever year it was, 2019, was it 20?
It was 20, I think. Yeah. I'm not sure.
I think that we all agreed that we're going to give this a try and see if it worked for the town. One of the reasons in my dim memory is that weren't sure, you weren't sure, nobody was sure whether this was something that was going to be something we wanted to continue down the road. So that was why we didn't put it into the budget. But
however, we then went to town meeting, and town meeting voted to join.
Voted $5,000, which is somewhat ambiguous, because then if we voted to join it, that would be committed to paying $5,000 a year, but yet it didn't appear in the budget. So that's a little confusing to me. But the second question I wanted to ask was, or at least give you my opinion, which is after all you've said about what has happened in the last few years with the management of this group, the mosquito control group, and the lack of documentation, lack of bills, lack of administrative kind of existence, if you will. Why do we want to continue to do this?
Well, they have reorganized. They got rid of that guy. They've got a new guy coming in. They've got sort of energetic leadership. They intend to make it work properly. I don't know what happened. I don't know the scuttlebutt, but I have my suspicions. And I have confidence that we are actually, I mean, the first year we had it, it was very good. We got weekly monitoring. We got weekly reports. Everything was great. This past year, it was like no mosquito year, so we didn't care. This year is not going to be like that. I want the monitoring.
Yeah. So you support the idea of doing it. You think it's good for the town to continue to enroll?
Absolutely, I do.
Thanks.
Susie.
And so in the warrant article, it says for the purpose of monitoring and surveillance of mosquitoes and other applicable sections of the said law. And so I guess it's not only that the mosquito control district needs to do their part, it's that information can come to Shutesbury and be usable and show the town that there's a purpose to it. So I mean, it's good to hear that maybe their department's finally stable. And do you feel like the Board of Health has effective ways to use that information?
Well, yes, I think it would be really helpful to have information about the existence in our town of mosquitoes that carry serious diseases, so that basically our function there would be an educational one. We would warn people about the dangers of mosquito bites, even more than we already do, but make them aware that there are seriously dangerous mosquitoes in the vicinity.
Catherine, I was looking at some of the old notes when we first discussed this. And at the time, I think it was mentioned that their goal was to engage 20 towns in this, or 20 municipalities in this group. And I think they were at about 15 at that time. Do you have any information about sort of what the current kind of roster of municipalities is in the district?
I don't.
All right. It seems to me that the kind of value of this would diminish if with the fewer municipalities participating in it, right? Because part of what's happening here is not just that we're getting kind of analysis and for our town, but I assume there's important information that's being collected kind of regionally that informs decisions. So I think that would be kind of a useful piece of information. Maybe the next time you speak with them, if you could, or get an update from them, if you could find out sort of exactly what the current membership of this district is. Like, I would be a little bit alarmed if you found out that there was like only 7, towns participating. Right. I don't know. I mean, obviously, wouldn't know if that was the case, but I think that would be useful information to share with the town.
Absolutely.
Jim?
Yes, Catherine, they don't provide us with any information about ticks, do they?
No, they don't. This is a mosquito control district.
Just the mosquitoes. Okay, thank you. That's unfortunate. I think we could use some information about ticks.
Well, you can get direct information if you have a tick. If you get a tick, you can send it to that lab at UMass to be. But I mean, as far as information about ticks, we don't need more information than we have, really, because the information is they carry diseases and they're out there in
Mm.
great numbers,
Mhm.
right? And that's really all they could tell us, if there were a similar program. And we already know that.
Well, I know we know it, but then in some areas, there might be much more serious infestation of really bad, not all ticks carry this stuff. If they were testing ticks locally, we might learn something about how concentrated the diseased carrying ticks really are. I don't know. I'm just speculating a little bit here because
I don't know if that guy, there's a tick guy at UMass. Is he he might be a Shutesbury guy or he might not, but he's like one of the major tick experts in the country at UMass, and he may be doing that.
Well, I don't know. It sure would be good to have more information about it because this is shaping up to be a pretty bad season. I mean, already people are picking ticks off of them. And
Ticks are active 12 months a year, so you
Yeah, I
really
know.
have to watch out all the time. But send an email to the Board of Health, and I'll see if we can find out something from that guy at UMass.
Okay, thank you.
Susie?
So are we saying that this year we want to have a line item for the mosquito control district fee, membership fee of 5,000? We're saying that. And we're not addressing the past because we don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think there's any reason at this point for us to concern ourselves with kind of past bills since it sounds like we've really only had kind of services in that first initial year, which we'd already paid. So yeah, I think it sounds to me, Catherine, like you're recommending that we add a budget line to the kind of add this as an additional line to the Board of Health's. I think there are 3 or 4 budget lines in the budget. So yeah, as a separate line, and that we funded at $5,000 a year, assuming that they get back on track and actually producing a useful service.
Right. Well, if they keep doing it the way they've done, they will provide the services this summer, and after that, they'll send a bill for it. So if we don't get those services, we won't pay the bill.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any other questions for Catherine? Bob?
Just a quick question, Catherine. What, if anything, does this have to do with mosquito spraying, this program?
Nothing really. It's kind of helpful in determining if we have a problem that the state might want to spray for, and it gives us an argument that we don't have these problems and they shouldn't be spraying here.
Okay.
I see. So it's like in that scenario, it's useful data to share with the state to prevent them taking an action that we feel is not needed and would have.
Exactly, and the mosquito control district doesn't do any spraying. They might recommend it to us if they thought the problem was great enough, but they don't do any actions without our permission. It's not like they are an authority that is taking over our authority.
Jim?
Yeah, Catherine, what sort of surveillance do they actually do? I mean,
they set up traps in several areas around the town, and they trap mosquitoes, and then they take them to the lab, and they look to see what kinds of mosquitoes they are, because only certain mosquitoes carry the diseases that we're concerned about. And then if they should find them, which I don't think they have in Shutesbury, they didn't in that 1 year. If they then find them, then I think they can test them for the diseases themselves.
I see. Where do they set those traps and how many of them?
It's been a while, so I don't remember, but it seems to me they set them up maybe 4 places in town. They set them up on public land. I know one of them is down by down near the Fisk Brook culvert. And I don't remember where the other ones were, but they try to get them, well distributed throughout the town.
Because the Lake Wyola area might be, I was curious because there's so many people concentrated there, and I was just wondering whether they had set traps in that area as well.
Yes, that's the Fisk Brook culvert
Oh,
one.
the
So
Fi-
it's
okay.
right there at the north end of the lake.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I don't think I see any other questions or comments. Catherine, thank you for bringing us up to speed on this. And we're going to ultimately discuss a range of budget issues, including whether to recommend adding a line for this purpose. So if we have any other follow-up questions, I'll reach out to you. I appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night. All right. Hi, Becky. Thanks for
Hi.
joining us. It's quite a marathon night for you. So just to bring you up to speed, we've reviewed capital planning, the 3 requests, and I think one follow-up that I think might be useful is there was definitely an interest in getting more information on the preliminary list of projects that the building committee is I guess working on, because I think it's some folks felt it was a little unusual for us to be funding through the capital process just a blanket sum for an unspecified, sort of set of projects. And so
Interesting.
to the extent that
We've done it probably 7 or 9 years in the past.
okay, I think nevertheless, I think if there is a list that the committee is working on, it seems to me that would be valuable information for the town. I mean, if this is ultimately going to be something that they're going to vote on at a town meeting. So it sounded to me like they were at some stage of working on a list. Is that right?
Yes, they've finalized, they got their final quote on the windows. So they are able to move ahead to do the town clerk's window and the window in the copier room. And they're going with the Pella quote, which was lower than the other quote that they had gotten from Window Works. So that will be done. That total, I think it's 5,400. I think I could be mixing up the quotes, but it's around $5,500 for that. And that will happen shortly. They have a quote for, they have a quote for, that they just received tonight, for the roof of the auxiliary highway shed, which is a metal roof that is very, very rusty, and it has like the old-fashioned plexiglass windows in the ceiling, and they all, not all of them, but probably 2/3 of them are leaking onto their equipment and onto the salt, the magic salt in the magic salt bin. So that feels, but the quote was more than that they can afford to do. It was for just under $27,000. They have, they've requested 2 other quotes that haven't come in yet. So that's more than they have. So they can't do that project with the existing funds. And the third major project that they're getting quotes for is the paint job that will be done upon the completion of the roof in the summer. So that's their short list. And with, we're over 30,000 on the short list. We have $20,000 available. They're doing small projects, like we found a repair company that was able to repair the door jamb, that the door handling unit at the door downstairs in the senior lounge. That door was slamming and slamming. Steve found a vendor that repairs these units because it's original to the building from 1950. So that's, so they're spending money on smaller things as well. So I'd hate to see them have nothing to work with.
No, I think so. I think it would be useful to have a document that it sounds like they're working on. So when that's at a place that can be shared, I think that would be useful information for the committee, and I think ultimately for the town, because sounds like there
And I
will
think-
be.
I'm sorry, AJ. The other thing that they're working on, that takes most of their time, is a very thorough inventory of buildings. They presented the first building that they've done, which was at the library. The next building will be here. They started with the library because it was the smallest building. And the inventory sheet is about 5 or 6 pages with details on every item to do with the building, from the mechanical units to the condition of, the trim, or where railings might be rotting out. So they're going through each and every building, and they're trying to, as they get through all of the buildings, they'll have a complete list and be able to prioritize which, where the money really needs to go first. And that's where the discussion about the painting, the painting is really a bigger priority potentially than the roof, but the roof is leaking and ruining equipment. So they're going to have a lot of decisions to make. By next year, they'll have a full, a full inventory of all the buildings that Finance Committee can look through and see how they prioritized it. Select Board is already looking at the document. So there will be a very clear documentation of any requests in the future. But until this date, we've never come forward. We've just asked for money, except for bigger projects that were specific.
Right. Okay, Bob. You're muted, Bob.
All right. Yeah, I just think that there's some cases, Becky, where there's a capital need, like a roof is a good example of that. And that could go through the capital planning process, which is our normal way of dealing with that kind of job. That was done in the past with paint jobs for town buildings, roof repairs, things that can be anticipated, things that can be reviewed by the capital planning committee and by the finance committee, and then put on a warrant for town meeting. And of course, the building committee always did have a line or two in the budget so they could do smaller repairs that come up, like replacing a hand railing at the library and all that kind of thing, or a single window or something that was under the $5,000 threshold for capital expenses. So I think that there's a way to sort this out that would make sense to me, that would allow us, like, for example, this roof at the highway department, wait a minute, it must have been leaking before now, and this is something that we could have anticipated ahead of time and planned for. This is it's certainly not acceptable for there to be a leaky roof. We know that that's the fundamental job of a building, is to keep the weather off of whatever's parked inside. So yeah, I'm not opposed to any of these repairs. I just think the better way to deal with it is some of them are capital. And in the past, we did fund our line, the building committee's line, I should say, with free cash. And sometimes we funded it through the budget process. But we did have, when we funded it from cash, we had reported to the finance committee that we had some things coming up that were going to require additional funds. So I don't have a problem. I don't think we should have a problem with getting some kind of detail here.
I don't believe you ever gave, you didn't give much of a list to FinCom, because I managed most of those requests before you were on on Finance Committee, Bob. And the idea was to not let that account drop below $10,000 because you wanted to have working money during the year.
Well, just as a financial matter, Becky, I just think, yeah, I've been on the finance committee, this is my 7th year, so we did have, if there's a reasonable argument for us to have a recurring budget line for building maintenance. That, because, yeah, it's an operating expense of owning buildings to have a building maintenance line.
Well, that's
And
what's
there's different capital expenses that which are in a different category. That's the point I'm making.
correct. And so the bigger items will go through capital. You know, the building committee is in its first year. They're seeing all the needs. They will uncover in detail many, many more needs. I wasn't you know, I did bring up the roof. We were anticipating that was going to come in closer to 15,000. And between the two projects, it would have taken the $20,000 balance that was left. Now that it's a bigger project, it does go into a different category. But we didn't know that until we received the bid today. So there's, you know, so then you have to go through a different process, and given the timing of capital planning schedule, does that mean they can't, you know, capital planning can't open back up this year? It might, and that it'll all have to wait till next year. But the issue is more about making sure that the 20,000 gets enough funding to stay at 20,000 after projects are done this year. And that was the request I made. That's what was done for Bob's building committee repeatedly. And
Right. But again, we had capital requests that when we did paint jobs, we got estimates for paint jobs, and we made capital requests for paint jobs.
did not come out of that fund unless they were small. We did all, you know, those, we went through capital and the bigger paint.
That's what I was trying to say. Exactly.
But what I'm saying is, we are both talking about the standing fund and making sure there is workable money for the building committee during the year. And that is the request that I put forward, that if the 20,000 is used up this year, that it can be make sure we.
Okay, so that should then not be a capital expense. It should be a transfer from cash is what I'm saying. That's what I'm driving at.
That's fine. How it's put in there, whether it goes up through appropriation or a transfer, that's the finance committee's decision.
That's why as a member of the committee, I'm bringing that up. Okay.
Okay, Susie?
Since I'm the minute taker and I'm confused, are we talking about the $20,000 request that was brought up in front of capital planning would end up being in a budget line or a different place?
It would be in a budget line.
Oh, okay, and so I tried to find what we have currently, and I see a $9,000 one.
No,
Building repairs?
that's under my budget.
Oh, that's your budget. So there's another place in this budget that we would be putting that
It's
20,000.
a fund. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's either, it's a fund. It's not a budget item.
Oh, okay, okay, that makes a difference in the words. Fund.
There's something called building renovations. I assume that's the line? Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, I'll
And
find,
that's the request that was supported by capital planning.
yep, I get it now.
All right. Let's see. George?
So Becky, I pulled up the expense report that you had sent a few weeks ago, and I'm looking for it right now, and I seem to not have it. Okay, and the special funds at the bottom, or below the operating budget on that, I found something called.
What page are you on?
I actually, when I switched screens to put my hand up, it came back to a different location, so I'm looking for it again. It looks like it's on page 16.
Okay.
A fund called Building Renovations. And it's got a balance of $21,125 in it.
Right.
And I'm curious what that is for. Is that the fund that you're talking about?
We're talking about.
Fund we're talking about, that's the fund that's going to pay for the $5,500 worth of windows. It's probably paying for, the $200 that or $130 that we paid for that other repair. And my concern was, we thought that the roof would come in about 15,000, and between the two, we would be at zero going into FY '24. So I brought the request forward to capital planning for $20,000, anticipating that fund to come to zero before the end of June. And it was supported.
So the, all right, so the expectation is that $21,000 is going to be spent in FY '23, and that this action would replenish that at $20,000 for FY '24. Okay. All right. George?
So would it make sense that like we do for, say, unemployment or some other things, that we have a flat amount in our budget each year and this just gets replenished automatically, and we can use not this year, but in subsequent years, a smaller amount, so that we're always putting money in it. We can, like a revolving fund kind of thing. We're putting money in, money's getting taken out, but we have a steady, non-fluctuating impact on the budget and a fairly low impact.
George, that's what we used to do. At one point, we were doing that, and then we would ask for a larger sum when some unusual expense was anticipated. But we did used to fund the building committee's fund out of the ordinary budget on a yearly basis. I don't recall exactly when that stopped, Becky. It was only a couple of years ago, I think.
It went back and forth between free cash and appropriation. I think
Right.
it's, and that's why I think there's a line item at the bottom. Let me just look real quick. Yeah, town building repairs, maintenance fund, line 177. And for a number of years, we had added $5,000 in 20 and 21, we added $5,000. But then,
I think we should have a line in there, because this is a permanent expense that we can anticipate to maintain all of our buildings. And I think we should have a line that's sufficient to cover the anticipated annual cost. I think 5,000 is probably too low, for, especially considering the cost of building services and supplies now. They've gone really up substantially, so, and then capital items can go through the regular capital process. So I think we should talk as we get down the road on the budget about funding that line. Don't you? Others?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds reasonable. I guess the question is, what do we, I mean, it sounded to me like we kind of need to take an action for this year because there's kind of an unusual level of spending. Maybe because there's sort of a backlog of kind of projects, or so there's sort of or deferred maintenance kinds of issues. And so I think we got to figure out what to do this year, but then moving forward, I think we should probably have a conversation about, yeah.
When you say this year, you mean FY '23, a
Correct.
transfer for FY '23.
Right.
Well,
Where would we get that money?
no, I guess what we're discussing is replenishing that line, because that we think that line's going to go to zero because of expenses in FY '23.
But do you mean replenish that line by putting it in as a line item for FY '24?
I guess what I'm saying is that yes, and so I think that, and that's probably going to be a larger number than what we're talking about, sort of doing kind of more routinely every year moving forward, right?
Can I make a suggestion, AJ?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Just to kind of maybe interpret what you're saying, like we could come up and establish what we consider to be a good guess about what would be appropriate annual budget line for that item. We could also anticipate consider transferring some free cash this year to that line to supplement what's in there because of the extraordinary circumstances at the moment. And we could also ask, and I would ask personally, for some detailed information about what's happening with that line this year with 21,000, so that we can just have more information And so we can make our determinations about what to do this year accordingly. So I think we could both have an annual line in the budget for building maintenance that would be appropriate. We could also supplement that this year with a cash transfer in the budget. And we could also, and I think those things would be fairly easy for me to support. But I'd lead to documentation, that's all.
Yeah, which we've asked for. It sounds like that we're gonna get that. So, yeah. Suzie?
So when you say that, Bob, you want to transfer free cash, you mean at a warrant article at town meeting? You're not talking about anything before town meeting? And then
Right.
you're saying it would be because we have some extraordinary repairs to catch up on, and we would make that a warrant article out of free cash. So when we
Yeah, it would be a warrant article no matter which way we did it.
well, when we looked at
Just gotta make it,
George's chart, that
Yeah.
would make a line on on our chart that we use for that transfer.
right.
Which is there now, based on.
Yes. That's right.
George blacked out. George, what did you black out for?
I don't know, something went on. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I don't want to shut down.
Shadow George.
I'm here, but now I know I can make all kinds of facial expressions and you won't see me, so.
The man's in agony, I can tell.
All right, we should move forward because we've got a few big items and it's already 8 o'clock or 8:05. All right, so I think what we should do is prioritize 2 topics. One is there's another extraordinary issue this year, which is fuel costs have led to an issue where we have $0 left in our fuel budget and $4,600 of outstanding bills. Is that right, Becky? Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got to deal with that. And I'm going to just share. I think this is what our current where our current FinCom reserves stand. George, I think this is right. Am I missing anything? You see this?
Oh, yeah, let me look at the one I have.
Okay. I assume, I don't know if you updated yours with.
I do every meeting, yeah. When we
Okay,
vote, I do it right then and there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you if I agree. I think Susie's been putting them in the minutes, so I think we
Yeah.
have it there too.
Yeah, I think that's the number.
That's the
Yeah,
number.
13,191, that's what I have.
Okay. So I guess given where we are in the year, Becky, can we assume that the need at this point is $4,600 or is it some number greater than that?
I would double that at a minimum.
I don't know.
Well,
So we're gonna
I
gonna
thought
put-
Yankees freeze in the dark. I thought that was the whole point of being a Yankee. Aren't we done with the heating season?
We're including diesel and gasoline here.
Oh, okay.
Heating season, this is it
vehicles.
was an issue, but the
Vehicles.
main issue is diesel and gasoline.
Oh, okay.
I see.
And that's what I'm here to ask for, because our trucks can't,
Yeah, no, I get it. I thought somehow somebody said,
roads, we
heating.
can't do anything if our diesel is empty.
So what if we did?
Can
boy,
AJ,
I-
did you explain to everyone about May 1st?
Yeah, I did not. So there's an opportunity to do a transfer after May 1st. Is that correct?
Yeah, could I just walk everybody through it? Is that-
Please. Yep, please.
So, as you all are aware, this is an extraordinary year for the FinCom reserve and needs that have been unanticipated. But in talking with Gail Weiss, our accountant, she reminded me that from May 1st to July, into July, I think till July 15th, the Finance Committee, if they meet with the Select Board, have the ability to do line-to-line transfers within the current budget. The one budget line in particular that is very much over is our health insurance line. And it appears we will have at least $70,000 left at the end of the year. That being the case, we will have an opportunity to replenish the Finance Committee reserve as of after May 1st. If that seems the most reasonable course of action to address these overages that we're facing. I think the last critical one that I've seen, but there could be others. The last one I saw is the fuel line with the gasoline and diesel costs being so high this year.
Right.
And if we were able to transfer today $10,000 from FinCom reserve to the diesel line, to the fuel line, and then try to work through new issues as they arise in concert with the select board.
All right, so but to the best of your knowledge, there isn't anything on the back burner that's been brought to your attention that would require a reserve request, other than the fuel.
Right. Not that I'm thinking about at the moment.
All right, Bob?
Yeah, Becky, just curious, this is totally attributable to the cost per gallon of fuel. Is that what this is?
Yeah.
And you're gonna have something at the next meeting, right? Something else? Joke. Anyway, yeah, well, we have no choice. We have to run our vehicles and we have to pay for it.
Right.
So we're gonna run this thing right down to the bottom of the barrel, right?
Yeah.
The next-
And then I'm going to come back at the next meeting and ask for the last 3191
Exactly.
for legal expenses, because I'm sure they're going to be gone.
Yeah, you need something else, staples or something.
All right,
So $10,000, is that what I just heard?
yeah,
And that's, thank you for bringing that up, Bob. Staples. A carton of paper is currently costing us $82,
Wow,
up from 30.
geez.
And we are burning through paper. Ahead of town meeting, we always do. All the PIP mailings are adding to it too.
Oh.
And the PFAS mailings.
all right, well, I guess I will make a motion to transfer $10,000 from FinCom reserves to the fuel. I guess it's the vehicle fuel line, is that right? Yeah. Okay, yeah, to the vehicle fuel line.
I'll second it.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Can we vote?
Overnight aye.
Grove's eye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Closure, aye.
Okay. All right,
And we can make, I think we should probably make a note that we are going to meet to do line-to-line transfers as soon as possible.
yeah. What are we gonna ask for? Is there,
Lots, no.
what, I guess what would be, well,
Well, we don't need to do it until we have other lines going negative, because so far we've covered everything.
yeah. So I think at our next meeting, we should prep for that, because it sounds like we're gonna have to meet. I don't know when do you know when the select board is meeting in May, Becky?
Oh boy. I'm afraid I don't have it in front of me.
Well, at our next meeting, we should just have a conversation about what we're gonna ask for and when that meeting, get clarity on when that meeting is.
May 2nd, 16th, and 30th.
Okay, so it sounds like the May 2nd meeting. We should get on their agenda.
Oh, did I do that right? I did it wrong. I'm sorry, it's May 9th.
May 9th. All right. Let's look at the budget. So you actually sent a new corrected version, right? Like,
I would,
They're
you
both,
would go for number 3.
yeah,
I mislabeled number 2. So
Okay,
just compare those other ones. and
Okay,
go
I see.
from there.
here,
All right, so 7:40 PM.
here. 740 expense.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Terrific. All right, download.
So what do we want to do? Do we want to look at the revenue budget or just go to the expense budget?
I prefer to go to the expense budget.
All right, let me share.
And I'm having trouble that these, I don't know if you have any trouble, but the PAFs are coming up in, yours looks normal. That looks better than mine.
Okay.
What I sent out to you, I keep getting a sidebar I can't get rid of.
Usually
right.
there's that arrow in the right-hand bar. See
Yeah.
that arrow, Becky, that's like next to the 3% halfway down below the
So right
range?
here.
Yeah,
Okay. Press
Yeah.
that.
yeah, usually that's what does it.
Okay.
All right. So I guess first question, Becky, is there anything that we're aware of that that is going to need to be changed on this?
Okay, so currently, since we are using the formula now on the COLA, I've put in the 3% through the salary page. And so all salary line items should show at 3%. I know I always have trouble with the moderator. He's at 2.97, but it's such a small number, it's hard to get closer.
All right, so the approved COLAs are in this budget.
Yes, they are.
Got it.
Okay, and then I have put in increases for the independent audit.
All right, it's $9,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
An increase of 4,000. I put in, moving down. Oh, I'm trying to move your screen and I can't.
Sorry.
That's good. Let me just make sure. Okay, so we had the increase in the computer maintenance, which for the assessors, that's contractual. Then we have, okay, no changes in treasurer expenses this year.
Can you use line numbers because I have a hard time following along.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm down to the town collector. It's 936.
Okay, got it.
Okay, this line, we actually had a decrease in her expenses. It wasn't expenses, wasn't it? No,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
2,300 in expenses.
Right, that was the Vadar reduction.
Yes.
Mhm.
And Bob has a question.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that when we were presented with buying the Vadar for the collector, we were told it would pay itself off pretty quickly because we'd save $4,500 a year. But it looks to me like we're not saving anything close to that. And we'll have to talk about this in detail later, but I think we should look at this budget for the collector because when Ellen was before us, I was a little confused because the information was really kind of incoherent that we were getting. There was one document that was on the screen. There was another document that Ellen was reading, Becky was reading from, and a third set of figures from Ellen. So we got to look at that carefully, and maybe we can save a little bit on that department. I'd like to see us save more because we did pick up 4,500 supposedly, but I think we lost half of that.
And that was postage and paper. And you remember the details that you discussed?
I remember the details, but they were not, it seemed like she was shooting from the hip. I don't know.
No.
No, she had gone through it very carefully, and then when she came before us, there was confusion on which was her final. And I'm checking to be sure. Yeah, because she had, so the reduction of the 50, she reduced it by 5390. And
To that amount, not by that amount, right?
to that amount. So there was like a $44.87 reduction
Mhm.
in computer maintenance. But then she was up 300 in paper stock, 600 in office supplies, and 200 in postage, and 1,000 in the binding commitment books.
Mhm.
So those things in total
Offset.
are your
Those are the
$2,000,
offsets.
$2,300 reduction. So it was because of the Vadar reduction that she has a net reduction despite increasing about $2,000.
Okay, so that clarifies that. Okay. I'm gonna keep scrolling here.
Okay, illegal expenses.
That's up
Oh, boy.
10,000, right?
Yeah. I've, given what's happened this year, these issues that are even getting worse going into next year. We're facing our first land court lawsuit in about 20 years with a very wealthy landowner. I think we will probably spend more than 25,000 on that case alone from the estimates I've gotten. I've gotten a $30,000 to $35,000 estimate on that.
What line is this, Becky, that we're looking at?
Line 41, the legal line.
Line 41, okay.
And so, if we're facing something like that, which exceeds this, exceeds the budget, are there any other places money can be drawn from for
Yes.
a legal process?
Yes, if, when we have bumps over the years and we know they're temporary, I would suggest that we fund a portion of our budget, that portion of the bump year to year with free cash. We've used free cash to balance the budget for non-recurring items in the past, and this would be a candidate for that. If we think it should be 30 or 35,000, as Becky's saying, it sounds like it should be 50. And we think it should be 15 every year, then 35,000 out of free cash. Just as an example.
Right.
Yeah, because they said Don is anticipating 1.5 year process. And it might not really get going. That's kind of what I'm thinking at 25, if it's not the full, but still, it still doesn't leave us money for any other lawyers.
And we're going to be going after the Army Corps of Engineer.
And we're trying to do that more politically. We're using the lawyers strategically. So it's not only the lawyer. He's doing one piece and the LSP is doing a piece. And then we're enlisting politicians to help fight our fight.
Yep.
And then if that happens, if we're successful there, and it probably take a number of years because their money, it takes them a while to get money through the federal budget.
Yeah.
So I don't anticipate getting the money from them quickly.
Becky?
Bob?
Yeah, Becky, from my point, I think that I like George's thinking on this, and I think that's a reasonable way for us to go. I'd like to have, if possible, have some details about what you see coming up in terms of the various big expenses that are coming towards us that we're getting closer to, so that we can figure out the right amounts to put in the budget, the right amounts to supplement the budget with from cash. I think if you have these expenses, we have to address that some financially responsible way. But I think it'd be good to have some detail about, can we be privy to some of this? Or?
Well, the activity has been primarily for this year, and this, I think everybody is aware that there was a situation where Concom wanted some work done, and Donna felt she had to recuse herself from the work they wanted done. So we ended up, Concom had to find a different attorney, and the one they found, their rate is $320 an hour. And Donna's rate is an unreal $125 an hour. And then because Donna had to recuse herself completely, which meant that the select board also had to get an outside attorney. And McGregor, the attorney Donna recommended for the town, is giving us a quote unquote discounted rate. He's normally $600 an hour, but we're getting him for $450. So
Such a deal.
Yeah.
it's a bargain. But, so everyone's working to use these resources very sparingly. The Concom at this point had been trying to redo their regulations with their, to go with their local wetlands bylaw. And they had come to the finance committee last year and got $5,000 for a consultant. So everybody probably remembers that. We now have an opinion from McGregor on the wetlands bylaw, and he cites a lot of problems with the wetlands bylaw. So the select board is encouraging the Concom to address their bylaw first and then address the regulations, because regulations are built on a bylaw. So so right now, Concom has two major projects. They have a regulations project. We're hoping they're going to tackle their bylaw project first, and then do appropriate regulations for that bylaw. So that could cost a lot of money. That'll include legal expenses as well. And then we've got regular labor issues, contracts. The union contract is up next year. So we're going to have to be pulling on Labor Council and reviewing, doing a review of our personnel issues and personnel contracts. So that's all on top of our normal everyday use of Donna to review whatever legal situations that arise with complaints and contracts and purchasing. Because before we do major contracts, like we used Donna quite a bit in finalizing the library designer contract and the OPM. The big construction contract will be going out next year for the library. We're going to need Donna to review that. So we just have an unusually high level of activity. And then when you realize one single case can cost you $30,000, and we're going to have at least, could be 75% of that cost hitting this year as well.
All right, Susie and then Jim.
So when George was talking about the FinCom could recommend free cash for a non-reoccurring lump of legal fees, that would be a warrant article that somebody would write up and put there in that town meeting that's coming up at ATM.
If you're going to fund it with part of this budget line with free cash, it would be done through a warrant article, but you don't duplicate the amount. So you wouldn't put 50,000 here and then write $25,000 article, because you'll end up with 75,000.
Right.
Right.
It would just be a dedicated warrant article for possible legal expenses that are unusual, and it would be for X number of dollars, and it would be a lot, it would be held in that way. It wouldn't be rolled into everything else. Is that right?
It'd be added to this budget line for that year. But at the end of the year, you're not you're increasing the amount, but you're using a different source. So it's
And,
not,
and that source that we're going to use, that additional amount from free cash, we're going to show that on the revenue sheet.
at the bottom of the revenue sheet. We'll
So
show.
that's the trick, Susie. By putting it on the revenue sheet, that's being covered through revenues and balances our budget.
So you put the 50,000 here, but the source of it'll be on the revenue sheet.
Right.
Bottom line, Becky, what do you think a good number is for the legal line going forward outside of these extraordinary issues that you delineated?
I've been able to manage with the 15,000, as you can see, looking, they're going back, I think it was 2019 when I couldn't. But I usually keep pretty strict watch on it, but
Even that
everybody
was close.
all this year.
Yeah, but I think that
around people
that
like-
seems sensible to me.
So your 25,000 is what you would recommend for not extraneous things, just because the way it's been going this year.
Just said 15, didn't you?
I said on a normal year, because that was the question, on a normal year.
Yeah.
I think 15,000 has been fine. But I think I think we should add 25,000 for this
Yeah.
coming year.
Don't make it 40.
Yeah,
Oh,
And then use 25,000 free cash to cover that.
Okay, that makes sense.
That seems sensible. Jim?
Yes, wouldn't it be a good idea to put in a separate legal line for the Conservation Commission, since they're going to have need of a lot of legal activity in the near future, from what I understand, not so much with all of the Lotto 32 and the library, but just to give you an example, there's a lot of tricky stuff going on with Lake Wyola, the lowering of the water and God knows what else. And you can't, Concom cannot call on Donna McNichol for that because there's a conflict of interest problem because she owns property and she lives on the lake. So, and we're talking, maybe $2,000 to $5,000. I'm not quite sure, but wouldn't it be a good idea to create a separate line just for Conservation Commission?
no,
Why not?
we don't, I think there should be one legal line for everyone in town. The issues you just described, the town has more legal responsibilities on those issues than Concom does. They're going to be they are leaving the town responsible to pay for all of that work. They're not responsible to do that work. We are. So, and they have money available in the legal line. And everyone, planning board has money available. This is a common source that we need to monitor. They have not outlined a specific need for legal beyond what they have. We both, the town and Concom both will need to have access to another lawyer if Donna has to recuse herself from that issue.
So will the town actually honor that request from Concom or turn them down? Because I get the feeling that there's been some hostility there between Concom and the town as to who's going to pay for or whether money will be available for legal expenses.
We funded, we funded a transfer this year.
And the select board came to the meeting and to support it and voted
Recommended,
to
yeah.
support their transfer, Jim.
Yeah, I know, but we've also, here, when Miriam came and asked us for
Second
money.
The second time.
What?
The second time. There were twice, she came twice. The first time we funded her.
Yeah, and the second time we did not. And that's gonna, that's just gonna turn up again and again and again. I'm just, The other question I have is the $5,000 that's on the consultant line for Conservation Commission, has that money been clawed back or is it still usable?
Why are you saying clawed back? What are you implying by that, Jim?
Well, just that, apparently it's for a bill that has not come from the consultant yet. And the question is, will the town pay for it since it was in 21, right? In other words, it was a year or so ago. And so that one-time $5,000, which is sitting there, is that money still available to the Conservation Commission? It is? It is, okay. I
Yeah,
just wanted to be sure
she
about
said she had plans for the rest of the year, but she didn't know if she was get to them. And we said, all right, well, if you get to them and you end up burning through it, come back to us.
Yeah.
But, she's got her hands full. And so
Oh,
there's
she
a
sure does, yeah.
good chance. Yeah, there's a good chance she's not going to get to those other things that she was talking about. That's why we said, let's
Well,
hold off for now on the second
she-
request.
Yeah, what she was requesting, that $5,000 she requested a year ago is for regulations for the local wetland bylaw.
Right.
It's for the regulations for the local wetland bylaw that McGregor has found major problems with. The select board, still allocated additional legal funds because that money, that $5,000 cannot be used for legal. It can only be used for consultant because of the language that she specified in her request.
That's right.
Does that roll over? I see it in the schedule. I just saw it.
Yeah, that's was my question.
The problem
Line
is
56.
because it was an FinCom transfer, rolling it over for a second year, our accountant is concerned she's going to get cited because clearly it was not an emergency if it wasn't spent in 2 years. But the year's not over. We don't know what will happen.
No.
And then it just goes back to free cash if it doesn't get spent and it doesn't get rolled over, right?
So that would be the case up through the end of this fiscal year, right? In other
What
words, she needs to spend that or get that bill from the consultant to come through and paid before July 1st.
Well, she needs to receive the services.
Yeah,
Well, I think she has received the services, but it hasn't been billed yet. That's my understanding.
Yeah, I don't know where you get your information, Jim.
Well,
and
from her. That's
Is
you
that
know, I
something
was.
she told you recently? Because that's not what she told us in our meeting with her.
Well, that's very recent because I was confused about this. So I called her up and asked her some questions and trying to get to the bottom of what's going on. That's all.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been told.
And the other issue is she has never been denied legal. She was, she just emailed yesterday. She was saying, she had assumed that the select board, when they said that they did not support her doing the regulations to be built on a bad bylaw, that they had rescinded the money for her, but they never did. She was calling me, she emailed me yesterday to check on, to see if she still had the legal funds that I had discussed with her, because I have to go around to keep the budget in line. I ask people what they need so I can try to make sure it's available when they need it. And she said she needed 5 hours of Donna's time, and I have that in the budget. She thought it was gone. I don't know why. My last email to her is pretty clear. So I reconfirmed, and that's how we do it, Jim. We don't set up separate lines for everybody because it really makes it difficult to be sure it's in the right box at the end of the year. If you have one line item, you can maximize who needs what when they need it.
Well, as I said, it's complicated, especially with the Conservation Commission, Donna on Lake Wyola and various other things. I just wanted some clarification about this. So thank you.
George?
So I just want to let everybody know, the schedule that we looked at earlier, in the lower section above where the cash balances are, we had a line item for the transfer from operating budget to capital stabilization. We had a line for free cash increase, so we can put an estimate. I put in another line in there, fund portion of temporary legal expenses. I put in $25,000 decrease from free cash that will now be reflected in the free cash balance.
Great, thank you.
And that brings free cash on top of it with the other stuff we talked about at 10% of a $6.8 million budget. So it puts us at around the 10% that Susie had mentioned. So just don't want anybody to be surprised and understand that I put that in there.
Thank you. That's great.
You're
All
welcome.
right. So, okay, so that's one change here, right? This legal line is gonna go to 40, and we're gonna add a line to the revenue budget, which is a free cash transfer for this purpose in the amount of 25, what did we say? Yeah, $25,000. Okay. Great. Anything else? Should I continue scrolling here? Anything else you wanted to?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I tell you where I bumped things up. Line 54, this is going to be
Yeah.
okay, so line 54, the dam management consultant. I learned yesterday that a more realistic number here is, this is the issue that Jim Hemingway was talking about with the drawdown. So the LWAC requested from Concom a 5-year extension on the notice of intent and MOU for the drawdown that was done in 2018. Concom rejected that. Their first reason was because there's supposedly a change in the natural heritage endangered species. It's probably a bridal shiner that somebody found again, but there's lots of them. Anyway, what's going to end up having to happen is we're going to have to hire consultants. We're working on the RFP to go out to bring in consultants. We're probably going to have to spend about $30,000 this year and potentially next year to get all the correct permitting in place to the level that Concom is requesting.
This is the issue that Eric had emailed you and I about, Becky? Yeah, okay, gotcha. I was
So,
gonna ask about that. Yeah,
Becky-
Bob?
Yeah, Becky, just so I can understand this better. First of all, there's not that kind of money in this draft right now, so.
Correct. I
this
just
is-
heard about these numbers this week.
Yeah,
They'll have to
Right.
be.
Well, I just saw it for the first time. But anyway, I'm asked a question. Are we talking about federal regulations protecting endangered species or something like that?
There's state regulations, yeah.
So we
And
have to determine what species might be threatened by our action and take action to offset or ameliorate these things or something?
no, it's just if they have found, if you're on a list and they say your town has an endangered species in it, it means that currently, it means that anybody that wants a Concom permit, even if the highway needs a beaver permit, they have to apply to natural heritage first. Any permit going to Concom is now requiring natural heritage and wildlife reports.
Our Concom is requiring that, or is it the state that's requiring that?
Well, we have two different things. We
Yeah.
have a state bylaw and a local bylaw.
Right.
So the requirements of the state are not as stringent as the requirements of the local bylaw. The local bylaw requires many more things, many more reports than the state does. So it's hard to answer that question.
I think I understand it better. Our local bylaw, our Wetlands Protection Act, and is more stringent than the state regulation.
Right.
Yes.
And so we end up having to do more things, more permits, more work because of the local bylaw. than if we were just responding to the wetlands bylaw, the state DEP wetlands bylaw.
But the local bylaw is the law that we operate under presently.
Under this current Concom, yes.
Well, what's our law? Unless we change to a different
No.
bylaw.
Nope. Concoms have it. It feels like to me they have more discretion than police officers. They have a lot of discretion, and our Concom for the last 20 years did not embrace the 87 bylaw. It's only in the last year and a half, going on 2 years, that the old version of the bylaw has been embraced. There
It's
are,
never struck from the book, so it's still technically
it's
available.
sitting there, right? It's been sitting there, but it was not embraced by the Concom, and they had discretion to use it or not use it, and they did not use it.
See, okay.
And you said that the 30,000 would be for probably 2 years, and it would be to get a new NOI and other legal consultation for permitting? Is that what you said?
Well, we would need licensed site professionals.
Okay.
We'd have to hire a firm. There's two major issues. We've got the drawdown issue by itself, which has a set of permitting with it. We have a second issue, which is the dam. Our dam consultant, Morris Root, for the last 30 years, 28 years, is retiring on June 30th. We're hoping to have him do the final inspection report of the dam. Morris's bills for an inspection report are closer to $3,000. They used to be never more than $2,000. We are anticipating a dramatic change when we go to an environmental firm. There aren't that many dam consultants. Morris had worked for the State Office of Dam Safety. He was incredibly good, and his fees were incredibly low. So we're facing the shock of going to base almost at a, not volunteer, but a very low cost. And now we're going to have to make dramatic, we have to bring all our permitting up to a level it never was at before. It was all done through cooperation. The last effort in 2018, it was the current chair, Penny Jakes, of the Concom, that worked hand in hand with Mark Rivers to write all the required notice of intent, drawdown information and reporting, and to enlist the help of a professional only for the wildlife section of the report. So we still have volunteers that Mark is still helping on the RFP, but we, to accommodate Concom's higher, requirements, it's going to go, everything has to be fully professionalized, and that could even mean hiring somebody to monitor the dam. Hopefully it won't get that bad. So anyway, it's an upcoming adventure that's going to cost a lot of money. And it has to happen soon.
And so would you think the finance committee, I'm asking the finance committee, we would put that as a separate warrant article? Because it's not about change, it would be a 2-year, but would it be setting aside money from our reserves or somehow to meet this process?
Isn't that a recurring?
Only those 2 years.
Only those-
Yeah, the 1,500 is not.
The 1,500 is the 1,500 the running of the dam management consultant, and not part of this drawdown and dam and LSP?
That's an ongoing, it used to be at $1,000 a year, I could pay for every 2 years I could pay for the inspection report. So what you're we're anticipating our basically costs going from $2,000 to $20,000 annually.
Mhm.
And then,
Really?
and then the notice of intent, well, not annually because, well, it could be. The inspections are required every 2 years. But there's other things that we have to do because of trying to permit the drawdown. And to permit the drawdown, we're hoping that we can have one firm be our dam consultant and do the work on the drawdown, which would be a 5-year, every 5 years, we would have to redo that permit. And that's what was quoted to me between 25 and 30,000 for that piece. And then the other piece are making sure we have a consultant established and in line so that we can make sure that all the drawdown issues are appropriately handled. There's, there's questions if you take the approach that Concom has outlined, whether or not we currently have a dam keeper who does he goes and measures things every morning and keeps a log, and we have an assistant who goes when he can't go. So we collect all this data and do all this stuff. If that can no longer be done by our dam keeper, who's basically a volunteer for $2,000 a year, if that has to be professionally done, and if all the lake monitoring that Mark Rivers currently does, if all of that has to be professionally done, it's going to be a lot more money.
Yeah.
And
Can they monitor, automate the monitoring?
I'm sorry,
Can they automate the monitoring, install equipment that just tracks the data each day?
I have no idea.
That's something we might want to think about in the long run.
If
I don't
we
think, George, I don't think so.
it still will have to have a professional monitoring it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This gives new meaning to the phrase "damn consultant."
Yeah. I use that term all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they go together, right?
Suzie?
So I'm wondering if drawdowns have to happen every 5 years.
No, they have to happen. Oh, right, the permits every 5 years.
If that has to happen every 5 years and it looks like it's gonna cost like around 25 to 30,000, would it make sense to also institute a line at 5,000 for that to accumulate, just like we do for audits? So
Audit, revals and that, yeah.
do what?
And the reval line is like that too.
Lots of things.
So we might be having an upfront lump because we're not ready for this, but we could have an ongoing line to accumulate for the every 5-year process.
I think we need to have detailed financial information. If this is very complicated, Becky, I know. But for us to sort this, we need to know, have this on paper somehow so that we can, as a committee, deal with this in the most reasonable and efficacious way. So I know there's a lot of balls in the air with all this, but I sense that there's some question marks too, that are some things that could be subject to different approaches or different interpretations. I don't know if there's some internecine battle be going on between the select board and the Concom or what. That's what
I don't think it's a battle. We're responding to a new approach. The Concom approaches things where the town, any town department, okay, it used to be if Tim needed to do a culvert, Linda would sit down with him and help him do the notice of intent, and it would go to Concom and we would keep going. The new approach from Concom is arm's length. We are looked only upon as an applicant, and all the rules are in black and white. And as the committee chair is learning, she makes sure that she tries to do, there's no room for discretion because she's busy, you got to follow every single rule. And which is a vastly different approach than our old Concom. So it's just a lot more expensive. She looks at us differently. She does not look at us as another department or that to work with. We are seen as an applicant only. And it would be so helpful if there was some sense and sensitivity to cost. And that was a factor in trying to get any of these multiple environmental things done, but it's not.
Well, it'd be nice for us to get some detailed information about what you see coming up, Becky, so that we can figure out how to pay for it,
And I'm working on getting the RFPs out so we can have the detailed facts. I am alerting you to this so that you're not shocked when I throw down these papers with huge costs on them that have to be funded.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
All right. All right, I'm going to continue scrolling here.
Everybody saw that we dropped the planning board expense line because they haven't needed that money in 3 years. So I think they're good.
All right.
Of course, this will probably be the year they need it. Okay, and here I was making, I made some adjustments to the electric and the heating. We've been under on the heating for the last couple of years by about that amount. So I figure it makes sense to put it where it is. I think we'll see more efficiencies once the fuel costs go down and the electricity rates. I don't know if they're ever going to go down.
They're going down.
They're gonna toggle, they said, between summer and winter. Why, thank you very
Yes.
much.
Yes.
Becky?
Yeah.
Question on that issue, like, we have some solar capacity, we are producing some solar. Do we have any projects or considerations in the line to make more energy for the town to use for its own buildings? This kind of lines?
The MVP grant that I have to get finished in the next 2 weeks is for the solar portion for the library. The Energy Committee requested, they tried to write up a request for a feasibility study for municipal buildings.
Yes.
MVP does not fund feasibility studies.
I see.
They fund projects, and once they heard that there's a new building coming on, they thought that was an ideal project, and they will pay for whatever the panels cost, and
In
then
the whole installation.
for the library. Yep.
Wow.
So that seems like, that's helpful. And then we can, if we have other projects already figured out and ready to go by the next grant rounds. We haven't received this MVP grant yet. Hopefully we will. And then in the future, we will apply for more solar through MVP, most likely.
Yeah, well, great, because I don't get any electric bills anymore personally, and I'm really happy about that.
Yeah,
That's a great thing.
But we don't have a lot of town buildings that could have solar on them. Is that right?
right. The problem is I already spoke with Graham Sefton, who's on the Energy Committee, and he was walking around trying to figure what could be added. Town hall roof, not good for a roof mounted system. Highway department, not good for a roof mounted system. It's the wrong the clamps don't hold on right. Fire department is the wrong orientation. And the school is surrounded by, is on a postage stamp lot surrounded by tall trees and is in the shade most of the time. So the specific buildings are not good candidates themselves. So And MVP likes roof mounted more than, what do they call
Ground mounted.
ground mounted and pole mounted. So try to
Uh,
take advantage of what they do support.
They
In the
support
long-
systems in the forest, like, say, if we cleared some land, and leased it or something.
Potentially, yes.
In the long run, if we ever do resolve the back of lot 032, that's already unforested and on the top of a hill. I mean, that seems like a perfect spot.
Not perfect because it's a narrow lot.
Is it up there? Because I thought it was pretty
That's
wide.
what they say, but all that information was what was reported in the vision statement that was done by
Conway,
Conway School of Design. And that particular report, the girls ended up doing 2 projects at once. I did not feel that their report was that well done. The old energy committee went out and did shadow testing, shade testing for solar on lot 032 about 7 years ago, and found it to be a very good site because the trees are not that tall on either side. It's not like the trees on either side of the solar panels at Town Hall were very tall and provided shading. Most of the trees on lot 032 are not as tall.
well,
Because of-
that's because they took all the soil off of it.
Right,
Nothing can grow there.
Stunted.
right.
Becky, isn't the MBLC paying for solar panels on the new library roof?
No, that wasn't
Knowledgeable
in the-
cost.
They will pay for 75%.
It's 75%, okay,
Of
well,
the panels?
yeah,
Oh, I thought
as
that
long as
was,
they're on the building.
oh, that's great.
Building.
And so this grant would pay the
The back.
remaining portion, the balance, yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say that about Lotto 32, because I did propose that. Jeff Lacy shot me down, said it was not appropriate, too much shade, too narrow, and I thought it would be perfect way because there's no soil there, and it's
And
plenty of
it's
land.
high up. Yeah, high up and no trees. It's great.
And we would get a professional assessment. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or you have an energy committee that has 3 physicists and some practical people on it and have all the tools to do the assessment.
Sure.
And that's what we had in the old energy committee.
Well, so Becky, in that same section there, you have town buildings, and you said that's your budget. How does that work? Your budget versus the buildings committee?
This repairs line?
Yeah.
Okay,
What number
so,
is it? Okay.
68.
okay, so that covers things like when the door fell off. And emergencies in repairs in the building. The majority, and I can use it to back up equipment maintenance, which is always overspent. What kind of repairs? So, I'm too fried at this point to give you a list right now, Bob.
Okay, well, I'll bring it up next time.
Okay, and I'll get the major things that have happened this year. It's stuff like the doors and the windows and stuff where if we need to replace the get the new fixtures and the lights to transfer to LEDs, when we need an electrician or a plumber to come in, when the toilet backs up, when the sink is clogged, all that kind of stuff.
All right. Folks, it's 9 o'clock. I think we should sort of
I agree.
wind this meeting
Yes.
down.
I think one important thing is to look at the schedule so we know where we're headed.
Yeah.
Time wise.
Okay. So let me actually share my screen, share that. So,
We need to change town meeting date.
yeah, let's go ahead and update some of these things. So remind me when we're, when it
June
is?
3rd.
June 3rd. All right, so I guess working backwards,
So
sorry, just pulling up my calendar.
so the budget presentation would probably be on the,
Like we could do the 23rd?
yeah. Yeah,
That would
yeah,
be like a week beforehand, okay? All right, so then that would mean finalizing the budget report. You know,
probably by the 9th.
Yep. And then let's see,
Oh, May 9th? Wow. It's coming fast.
Or, no, maybe by the, maybe it's May 16th.
yeah, do people think that's too
Well,
ambitious?
I guess question for Becky is when do we need it for the mailing and for the warrant article?
Well, we don't mail, right?
Oh, true, true.
So it goes out electronically, and we do have some printed copies available. But then we don't have to deal with, folding and getting it in the mail.
We don't
So-
mail to
so-
people that are not connected, Susie?
Well, last time, or maybe 2 times ago, there were copies available, and they were available around the clock. They were set outside for people who wouldn't be able to download them or get them electronically.
I see.
So then our drop dead date is the warrant article,
Yeah,
and that's what, 2 weeks before?
The warrant article is the May 2nd.
Second,
Oh, it's a month before.
okay.
a month.
Second.
Mhm.
Oh, we gotta wrap up this budget soon.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do. We need to meet.
Wow.
So wait, May 2nd is when select board votes on the warrant articles, or is that us?
They're
Yeah,
not meeting till the 9th.
so your regular meeting is the 19th of April, right?
Yes,
Okay,
Oh.
so you can add one more meeting in there for April 19th. And then, you can-
18th.
Yeah, let's go back to Tuesdays.
Okay.
How's the select board doing on assembling the warrant?
they will be discussing it for the first time on the 25th.
Okay,
So we gotta go over this budget on the next meeting. Is that what, that our job?
yeah, the 18th.
18th. All right, and then,
And I just wanted to, the other item that I added $1,500 to was the IT support line.
Right, and so now do we have the Google costs online here in the line?
They are not in there yet.
Okay, we need those, because that's the ongoing one, right?
Well, it's not just Google,
Yeah, I just call it that.
Google Plus.
all right, so I can already see that I'm gonna have that week of May 16th, I'm out of the country. I guess that was when our town meeting was originally gonna be, and I was gonna have to miss that, so.
Well, we might actually not, well, I think you're gonna miss something anyways, but finalizing the budget report after the articles are approved, in the past, we've had a few people meet together, take the old template.
Yeah.
And put in the numbers that are now appropriate once the articles are approved.
Right.
So, and then, well, so I guess we want to be able to get that up in front of people.
And the committee's gonna have to vote to approve
Oh, yeah.
that as a, a document.
Yep, so it's like every week for a while there.
So I think if it's okay, I think we're gonna have to push to the 9th. I think we're gonna have to make that on the 9th. We're gonna have to meet on the 9th.
Mhm.
But on the ninth, I don't think you can approve the warrant articles until the 9th. Because the select board is reviewing them on the 25th.
Okay. Oh, I thought you had said May 2nd was the date we had to approve.
I'm trying to figure out if that is the drop dead date. It might be.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
just the select board doesn't, I mean, they will, I think the 9th is when the warrant articles should be approved.
Okay,
But does that work?
I think, well,
You can't find, yeah. It can't be the same date as you're finalizing the budget.
right.
Can the finance committee meet on the Wednesday after the select board approves the warrant articles? And I missed when that was. Are they approving them on the 2nd or are they approving them on the 25th?
Oh, they're not approving them on the 25th. I don't see them approving them till the 9th.
Oh, really? And so how many weeks ahead is
Because
the work?
they typically don't, they'll meet the 25th and the 2nd is the next week. 2 weeks is the 9th, is their regular meeting.
Okay, and so once they approve the warrant, then it can get posted and it needs 14 days?
Yeah.
Okay, so 14 days away from June 3rd is what they're looking for. Where is their calendar?
Why is that not May 2nd then?
About the 19th. We really don't need to know that, Susie, because we're talking about approving it by the 9th.
Okay,
All right, so so in other words, we have to, FinCom has to, no, that was right? You're saying May 9th is when the select board has to vote on
the warrant article.
warrant articles, right? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think May 2nd is the date that FinCom needs to make a recommendation on each of the warrant articles, correct?
I
With
keep
the-
saying it's on May 9th. You have to do it the same. Or you have to do, if the
I see. Okay,
select board is doing it May 9th, you need to do it May 10th.
I see. So that they have to come first. Okay. For some reason, I thought the select board vote was of the warrant articles, including FinCom's recommendations, but I think I have it backwards, right?
They set the warrant, that's their job, so
Yeah. Okay, so that has to precede.
then we go in a,
Got it.
make our recommendations on it.
But I guess if they're all just sitting there and they have approved, yeah, if everything goes smoothly on the 25th, then you can do it on the 2nd. I'm just leery that they'll probably be making changes between the 25th and the 9th.
Right. Okay.
We can begin the budget report. And so it is only the finalizing on the 9th. So part of our work is after the 18th of April is still making sure
Plenty of
all
time.
pieces of the budget are understood and can be sent into a report.
Yeah, that's plenty of time. And Susie, I'm just thinking about that. I can start the template for next year. So I'll take last year's and I'll start setting it up for this year. And as you suggested, I might even start putting numbers in that are on the current budget can always change them. But like to have a jump on it. Just in that regard, I'd like to be involved in that process, but I'm going to be missing in action from May. Wednesday, May 3rd, May 4th, May 3rd to May 8th, I'll be missing in action. So if we have to do any refining on that, I'll have to pass it on to somebody else. But, you know, there's a graph too that gets a little challenging.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'll give it a start and we can have it, maybe even we can look at a draft of it in our next meeting.
Okay. Mhm.
All right, so what are we doing on May 2nd then? I guess we'll just keep it open for now. Bob?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
going
just
to
for-
the budget again.
Let me guess.
We'll need the time.
I just want to say, I'm going to the vineyard the week of the 18th. I have no idea whether I'm going to have connectability or anything. It's just trying to set up. I got, like everybody else, I've got lots of conflicting. days on
April
my
18th?
schedule.
April 18th or May 18th?
April 18th. So the 25th would work better for me to discuss the budget, but I may be available on the 18th, but it's very possible that I won't. And I'd really like to be part of that process with the rest of the committee. So I'll let you know when I nail my plan down, but I certainly wouldn't mind us having the budget discussion on the 25th, where I know I can be present.
That's a select board night, right?
Meeting Night.
Oh, is it? So that doesn't work?
Right, but we could be nailing down the budget on May 2nd, so we could begin our work. I mean, we've already begun our work. And then we could finish it on the May 2nd.
Okay, well, here we go. I told you, just about, doesn't matter how much time you add on, we still got to get crushed.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
All right,
so
guys.
true.
Does this look right? So we're meeting next week on Tuesday.
And the select board met this week, right? So we're getting back onto our
That's right.
alternating. time.
3 times this
I
week.
know they did, well, and other people too. I think it's important, I mean, with Les Luchanik's comment, it's always really busy in the spring, lots. It's the end of the fiscal year that we're working out, and it's the beginning of planning this, and it's going to be this way.
Yeah.
It's not like people invented a reason to have extra meetings. Oh, my God.
Well, and it's also, it's like on any given night, there's multiple committees have to meet. I mean, it's just the.
Yeah, it's
So that's,
out of our control.
yeah, exactly. I mean, so I understood. I understood he wanted to be in two places at once, so I get it.
So we're
Okay.
scheduled for next Tuesday, is that right?
So we are scheduled for Tuesday, yes,
I'll let you guys know if I cannot
Okay.
make it.
All right. So,
Bob,
Okay.
if you have any questions on the budget before, don't hesitate to call me.
Okay. I could actually email some questions in if I can't get on FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, but we'll see what happens. I don't know where I'm going to be staying, probably in the tent.
And it's really important to remember
There you
that
go.
Becky is doing 100 things right now. So,
Yes.
you know, you don't get to know everything before it happens. Really don't.
Okay, great.
all right.
Everybody.
I don't think we need to vote. We'll
I
just.
make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
We're on.
All right, decide.
Bye. Night, everyone.
Celtics 3:30 on Saturday.
Celtics, all right, awesome.
3:30. Thank you.
Bruins,
Yeah, Bruins too. Wow, crazy season. Who's got time for annual town meeting?
all right. I know, I gotta get TNT now somehow.
All right. Thanks, Becky. See you.
Bye. Thank you.
Oh,
so
Becky. So